Hey there, it's Tess and Christina. We're the co-hosts of Authentically Wild, a podcast that's here to shake up how you see life, relationships, and your healing journey.
This isn't your typical feel-good chatter. We're diving headfirst into the raw, real, and transformative conversations that can change everything you thought you knew about yourself and the life you're currently living.
Pulling back the curtain on our day-to-day lives, talking about relationships, parenthood, personal growth, trauma, and spirituality. Both of us have transitioned from lives that felt stuck and inauthentic to discovering a way of living that's raw, honest, and deeply healing.
The breakthroughs that we've had, they've been wild. And they're exactly why this podcast exists. We knew we couldn't keep these conversations to ourselves.
So if you felt lost, stuck, or like there's something more out there for you, this is your sign.
It's in the hardest, messiest seasons of life that we discover our truest selves. But here's the thing, the choice to dig in, that's all yours, baby.
So buckle up.
Because shit's about to get wild.
Hello.
Hello, friends.
What are we doing today?
We are diving into relationships again, our favorite topic. As a side note, y'all, I just finished Tess's mother wound workshop. She had me crying like a baby.
It's my specialty.
We were just having a laugh. Like, if somebody were to ask Tess, what do you do? Oh, I make people cry.
In the nicest way.
In the nicest way. It was a very beautiful, healing experience to get to do that, to see you in your light shining, and, you know, to tap into the hardest relationship around.
Unfortunately, we're not talking about that today. It's the relationship with you and your mother.
No. Today, we're talking about the relationship with you and your partner, which could be like your mother.
I love that. Good segue.
So today we are continuing on with our little relationship series that we started last week. If you did not listen to last week's episode, we talked a lot about how your relationship should be a trigger for you, right? Because when we get triggered, that's where we can experience, if we're willing to dive in, our deepest healing and expansion. And today we will be continuing on with this piece of relationships, and we're looking at choice in relationship. That truly every day is a choice when it comes to your relationship. And you are either choosing to show up or choosing to not.
Yeah, girl, preach.
You know, it's funny, like I actually recently reposted this piece to my stories before we were even talking about this topic that I saw and I read, and it was interesting to see the feedback I got of just how many people were like, whoa, yeah, that's powerful. So I'm going to read it here just to start us off. I think it would be a nice piece to start with. Instead of saying, I don't have time, try saying it's not a priority and see how that feels. Often, that's a perfectly adequate explanation. I have time to iron my sheets. I just don't want to. But other things are harder. Try it. I'm not going to edit your resume, sweetie, because it's not a priority. I don't go to the doctor because my health is not a priority. If these phrases don't sit well, that's the point. Changing our language reminds us that time is a choice. If we don't like how we're spending an hour, we can choose differently. You know, I like this piece, one, because it really highlights choice, but it also shows us where sometimes we aren't always making the choice that maybe we do need to be making.
Really puts a lot of self-accountability on you, right? I'm sure there are people listening feeling a bit activated. I mean, I always try to say something similar. A different way is, because you're right, everything is a choice, whether this is our relationship or habits that we have, our relationship with ourselves, is I say, I am choosing to watch this show. I am not choosing to settle this argument, or I am choosing not to go to the gym. Right. And I think it really helps to magnify this whole piece around, are you leading from discipline, commitment, what you know it requires for whatever your goal is, whether that be a harmonious relationship, your health or fitness, or are you not? Right. There's just so much self-accountability in saying, I am prioritizing it, or I am not, or I am choosing it, or I am not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And almost this like piece, like, we let our emotions dictate so many of our actions, but really it's always a choice. There's always still a choice there.
Yeah, really, because even if you're sitting here being like, if you're in your relationship and you're starting to take inventory, you're either choosing to dig in or you're choosing to not, right? You're choosing to look at the hard stuff. You're choosing to not. You're choosing to open up and connect. You're choosing to not. And there are going to be reasons behind this, but it becomes up to you to start to get curious.
Mm.
And one thing that I'm really finding that we're going to dig into here a little bit today is it's not going to always feel good. It's not going to always feel in flow. It's not going to always feel happy go lucky. In fact, very rarely lately for me it has, but I've come to this place of understanding why. Again, we'll dig into that. But when we can actually step back and see that we are always choosing, I mean, one, for me, that takes back your power. But it also, yeah.
On that piece, sorry, you just made me think of this. My question would be is, does everyone want to take back their power?
Mm.
Because even just in us repeating, I am choosing, I am prioritizing, there's so much self-accountability there. But how comfortable is it? How easy is it to be the victim, to project, to actually give away your choice and say, you're making me feel this way.
Yep.
You're upsetting me, and that's why I'm not showing up. I am sick, and that's why I'm not doing X, Y, or Z. Right?
Well, and you saying that really makes me think of your journey, right? And how many times I have heard you talk about what you and Tori went through, the infidelity, and I would be willing to bet the vast majority of people would go through that and stay in that energy of this is happening to me and carry that forward in their lives into a pattern, or probably was a pattern, or, but whereas I think it's so beautiful to have watched you on your journey be like, yes, Tori did this, but I also played a part in the relationship. And boy, oh boy, that is a whole other level of choice.
Oh, yeah. I mean, on this concept of relationship, and this could be for anyone, no matter where you are, anything could have happened. Years have gone by. There's just maybe some built up resent. There's maybe some turmoil. Maybe there's something like a big rock bottom of infidelity. But you have a choice, and you actually have to make one if you want your future to be any different. And that can look very different. Even if you choose to stay with that person, you have to choose to show up differently. You have to choose to heal those issues. If you choose to leave that person, if you don't change anything, if you don't choose to look at your behaviors, your patterns that led to that, you will just call in the same thing again. Right? And ultimately, like, if you choose to stay and you choose not to do anything, the future is going to look real bleak.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of hate, a lot of resent, a lot of built up anger. And trust me, like, I have seen it in people, right? They come to me being like, how did you heal this? How did you move through this? I said, it's a choice. And it's one you have to make. You have to do the heavy lifting. People don't like that.
Well, and it really begs this piece of, and it makes me think of how you mentioned the emotions. Even if you're in your relationship right now, maybe you're unaware of the pieces that need to be looked at, or you are aware, but you're not ready to go there. You're still making a choice to not look at the things, to not dig into the things. And you might be thinking that you're doing your relationship a good thing. Like, because if we go there, it might mean we break up. If we go there, it might mean we're going to rupture. If we go there, it's going to make this harder. But I'm going to tell you something right now. It could be that, but it could also take you to a place you've never been in your relationship together, to a level of expansion that you've never known.
That sounds so buttery. Only because I've been there. And, I've had conversations with others who maybe did choose. They made the choice to stay, which is, again, there's no shame if you don't. But what the choice actually is they chose to do the inner work. And then in there are lots of circumstances where the depth, the evolution of that relationship that they were able to get to was worth all the pain and all the work and all the demons that they had to face, all the things they had to look at in the mirror for them. And they are thankful in the end for whatever experience or catalyst that created that in them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
beautifully said.
And so, now that we're on this piece of doing the inner work, and that's something that Tess and I talk a lot about, you probably hear about it a lot. What does that even mean? But I think it's important to understand, why is doing the inner work important when it comes to relationship and choice? And the truth is that when we are doing our own inner work, we start to create space between the things, the triggers, we talked about this last episode, that are showing up in the relationship and our response. We start to build awareness. We start to be able to see things from a greater perspective. And when we can start to have more awareness of the things showing up, where they come from, the root of them, how we want to respond versus how we are responding, like as we start to build all of this is where you start to have greater agency and choice in your relationship.
I love that. Yeah, you really take your power back by looking at your own stuff. And, so often I think we're always expecting the person on the other side of that relationship, in this case, maybe your intimate partner, to make the first move. I need you to be more like this. I need you to show up in this way. You have to start with you. I repeat, you have to start with you. There is an energetic piece that is happening in relationships when you begin to take self-accountability, when you begin to get vulnerable, when you bring up the hard conversations. That person is going to match you or they're not. And that alone is enough of an answer. Like, so many people want to figure out the relationship dynamic. No, 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 no. What are you here to learn? What are you here to heal?
Yeah.
And the universe is going to show you real quick. They're either there for it, and this is going to create a depth to this container. And this is also friendship too, right? Or that relationship's you're going to really start to see that gap begin to increase, and that maybe they can't meet you there.
Well, and here's the thing, when we aren't doing our inner work, and this stuff shows up, continues to show up, and it will continue to show up because we're humans and we work in patterns, and we're cyclical beings. If you're not looking at your stuff, you will continue to make decisions from your trauma, from a distorted lens, right? And another piece that you said there that really landed was, and because I know that a lot of our audience identify as women, identify as females. So I want to say right here, and this is something I've really been learning over the last little bit around energies, masculine and feminine energies. I heard this and it's really landed for me. Where the feminine sees and receives the vision, the masculine executes. So where the feminine receives and sees the vision, the masculine executes. So if you're sitting there waiting for your partner and it's a guy, he's masculine, and you're like, why aren't you seeing what needs to be done here? Why aren't you changing these things, right? Why aren't you seeing the problems? Well, actually, it's our job in the feminine energy to actually be able to see. We have a greater vantage point because of our intuition. And then it becomes, is my partner executing with me?
But so often I think we expect them to be telepathic in some way, read our minds, right? Like the feminine, and everyone has both of these energies, by the way. But very much women are meant to be more in the feminine, right? And so that's our emotional body. Like, we are meant to bring those pieces to light. I remember actually once I was in this course, it was like the difference between men and women, and I was complaining. I was definitely being a victim. I was like, well, I hate that I have to write my husband a list of like what to do. Maybe plan a date and She's like, well, does he do it? I said, oh yeah. As long as like I kind of communicate it. She's like, well, get over yourself. Like, who cares if you need to make a list? And she really like came at me, and I was like, she's right.
Yeah. And I think this is a whole other topic. Maybe we explore this as an episode, but this is also where women for a long time have really been in their masculine. And so it's really skewed the energy a little bit. But when we're in a really natural energy within ourselves, for the most part, the woman in the relationship or the person who embodies that feminine energy more is meant to be able to see more. And if you have to tell your masculine partner what he has to do, that's okay. Does he do it?
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece, the willingness. When there is willingness, anything can happen.
Yeah, and like there's, I mean, a level, right? If you're having to nag and constantly remind, that's different. There's a behavioral pattern there, absolutely, that they need to take accountability for. But this is like, don't be so stubborn that you're just sitting over there being, why can't he meet all my needs? Or why can't she do this, this, this? It's like, you gotta be willing to speak up and communicate, which also means like understanding what's going on for me. Why am I feeling resentful? We talked in the last episode about disgust, right? Enmeshment. Why am I feeling that way? What's going on for me internally, emotionally? What do I need?
Yeah.
Right?
And that's just the thing, is that this work is a practice. It becomes a choice that we make each day to show up, practice awareness, see what's showing up, dig in. Doesn't mean you have to dig in every single day. And I think that there is this misconception, at least for me, there was, where it's like, we should enjoy it. It should be something that we love to do. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, I don't know if this is a case for you too, but like very often I don't want to be digging into the pieces. And there's this piece around, can you view choosing to dig in, choosing to look at these things more like discipline, like how you would support your body, support your health, support your children every day. Your relationship needs that too.
Yeah, and if people, I think a lot think, well, this just isn't the right person for me. There's all these pieces coming up. And that might be in some cases, like not everyone's here for the same expansion, the same growth. And you and I have riffed on that a lot. But, I just talked about this in a course, that our biggest wounds and traumas typically come in the container of relationship. And they actually have to be healed in the container of relationship. And so what I mean there is, yeah, maybe something came with your relationship with your mom or your dad or your elementary school best friend. There was some betrayal or some, major emotional impact or emotional scarring. That pattern is going to reappear, especially in a safe relationship dynamic, like an intimate partnership, because it wants a different outcome. It wants you to have a different choice. You have different tools. And so know that a lot of the patterns, the pieces playing out in your intimate partnership are probably things you can trace back to earlier on. And that's why they're there. That's why they feel uncomfortable and really charged.
Yes.
But we so often just want to blame that person rather than being like, what is this here to show me? What is this here for me to unlearn or learn, create safety with? All of these pieces, right? Yeah. Like there's so much more to a partnership, a lifelong partnership with someone than just it's flowy and we have fun together. Like if that's all the purpose of it was, I don't think we'd be getting kind of ripped off,
I mean, our souls would feel that way. We came here for big energy, baby.
That's right.
But it's got me thinking of this quote, falling in love is easy, staying in love requires choice.
Yes. It reminds me of this quote Esther Perel always says. She says, the most successful relationships are those who recognize when they're in the valley and they remember how they get to the peak, and they make the choice by discipline, everybody, to climb back up the mountain. Because if you think that your relationship is meant to be in the clouds all the time, absolutely not, right? Polarity is the spice of life. You have to be able to have done that inner work, like Christina just said, recognize we're in a valley right now. We have a choice here. What's showing up? Why is it showing up? Let's get to the root of this and let's climb back up together. Right?
Yeah, and it's got me thinking, I really love that quote that you just provided. The peak feels good, right? Like it reminds me of like when you're on the mountaintop and you're looking around and it's like beauty, majestic.
Yeah.
And it's got me thinking about something that so if you're listening to this and you're like, well, how the heck do I create discipline with this piece? Maybe you don't use the word discipline, but one thing I try to remind myself of is, when I wake up in the morning, for 3 or 4 years now, I've been taking cold showers every morning. I do my meditating, I do my journaling, all that stuff. Listen, you guys, every morning I don't want to get in that damn shower. Every morning. It's just become a non-negotiable now. Like it's a no choice. It's a choice to give myself no choice. But one thing that's helped with that is I know how good I'm going to feel after that. And this is giving me an idea of like, because I never thought about it this way before. But now when I'm thinking about approaching these sticky, hard conversations, stuff we got to dig into, when when you got to say that stuff. I'm going to start to remind myself of how good it's going to feel after, because it always does. There's this level of intimacy that you touch into after those really hard valleys, conversations, the things you have to bring up or grapple with. There often is that peak again. There is that feeling. And so maybe that can be something you remind yourself of when it comes to having to step into it.
The dopamine hit is on the other side. Yeah, I like it. I can see why that works for you.
My ADHD is like, okay, yep.
I love that. Two things that Tori and I do. Number one, he's way better at this than I am, but it is almost having like a little mental cue when things are starting to get a bit sticky between us, or we're a bit, at each other. He'll kind of just look at me and say, we're in this together. Like, especially, around stuff with kids, you're coming at each other. Like, why did you do that? Why'd you do that? He'll be like, hey, we need to solve this together, that you're a team going back up from the valley, right?
Yeah.
And I think so often we want to stay oppositional. And that's actually that victim mentality coming up, right? Because if you're on the other side, I can blame you. But if you're beside me, I got to work with you. And so it's kind of like, how can you change your mindset towards like, they're not against you, they're with you. Right? There's like a different energy there. Instead of oppositional, it's like supporting, even if it feels sticky, right?
Yeah.
Something I always try to do as well is like, when I notice I'm getting charged or triggered, or there's like an uncomfortableness there, I need to step away for a second. And the first question I ask myself is, what can I do to help alleviate this? Or it could be, how am I contributing to this? I always try to grab the mirror first, because if I can lead with that, they usually will meet me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, oh yeah.
But it is a muscle, like Christina's saying. It's something you have to practice over and over again for it to be habitual, for it to be autonomic for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That piece you said of what Tori says, at first it triggered me, but then as I let myself be with it, it diffuses the energy a little bit, right? It reminds me of how they say that you can have the best conversations with someone driving beside them or walking beside them. And that's because the energy, you're both walking or going in the same direction, and it's not faced at each other.
Yeah. Have you seen those TikToks? There's this one couple who's like, anytime we're fighting, we go nose to nose. We touch nose to nose, and we're like, you're being an absolute jerk. And then they just kind of start laughing. And then
I love them.
You don't use humor for everything, but there's lots of little things you can practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, humor can be really good though. Like sometimes Derek will just look at me and he's like, you're ridiculous right now, and just start laughing. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm being a little ridiculous.
There's this one practice someone was saying on a podcast once. They're like, when my husband and I fight, one of us just strips down naked. And then like, how can you stay mad?
No, you can't. But I know you have
to deal with your shit still, but
yeah. Well, I was going to say, I know what's going to want to be happening after that. And when I'm mad, I don't know if I want to do that.
You'd be surprised what happens when you take a few layers off.
Hi, my friends. We're going to pause here for a moment and just let you know, if you're needing deeper support on the journey, some of the ways that you can work with us.
Hey, thanks for listening. It's Tess here. I know life's challenges can feel overwhelming, but through breathwork, there is a way to find clarity, release those stored emotions, and feel more at peace. I offer one-to-one group and online sessions, and I'm excited to share my upcoming digital breathwork audios, perfect for when you need support on the go or in your own time. So if this speaks to you, visit my website, tessrouse.com, or connect with me on socials at @HerUnEarth. Let's breathe through it together.
Hi, friends. Christina here, helping you connect within yourself, develop your intuitive gifts, and tap into your deeper power and purpose is just some of the beautiful work I do with clients. I offer one-to-one deep dive soul coaching and one-to-one readings with your choice of an Akashic Record soul reading or an intuitive guidance session with Spirit. And if you're ready to go all in, I offer my Soul Empowered membership, which includes weekly live meetups, access to all of my online programs, my entire library of guided meditations, one-to-one support from me, as well as community connection with others on the soul journey. You can visit my website, rootsoflovecoaching.ca, or connect with me on my socials at christina.soulempowered. I can't wait to support you deeper on your path.
And now back to the episode.
I love that.
Okay, back to being serious.
Yes, but back to this piece of the discipline, something that helps me as well is when we are going through a tough phase, which it feels like the entire last year has been a lot of valleys, but I try to remind myself of what is the vision here? Where are we going? Where do we know we want to go together? And that always helps me bring things back into perspective, because for Derek and I, we know that at some point on the journey, we want to do work together. We want to help others, potentially in relationship or with conflict or with different pieces. And that in itself reminds me, well, then of course we're going through all of this now, because in order to be able to do that work, we will have had to have done that work within ourselves and in our relationship. And so I say that because if you're listening, you might not have that goal with your partner to do work together. But what is your vision? Where do you want to go and how do you want to feel? And I would be willing to bet that this stuff that's showing up is a direct indicator of what is not in alignment of how you want to feel together or where you want to go.
Right. It brings up this piece too. A lot of people think that once, we're in a long-term relationship, a year or a few years have gone by, the veil of marriage is upon us. The work's done.
Yeah.
We found our person. We just wipe our hands, all that stuff, showing up, doing our hair, sending the sweet texts, leaving the cute notes, being open to what they have to say. And we get in these habits, right, of like, you're locked in now. Like, this is a prison, so it doesn't really matter how we treat each other. And I would say if you can change that in alignment with what you're saying here is like, where do we want to go? Your relationship is a choice. Your partnership, it can grow and deepen and expand as big or as small. It can contract too. As you want. And so to think that the moment we say I do, or we move in together, or we have a child, whatever it is for you that feels like kind of that committal precipice in your relationship, that's actually when you got to do even more work. That's when you really got to start showing up, when you really got to be looking in the mirror, but also just like the everyday pieces, right? And so maybe you're going through a tough time, but it's like, how am I showing love at the same time? How am I planning date nights like I used to? How am I having little gestures, whatever it may be? Like, this is actually when it matters even more, right? We get a choice in who we stay in connection. How big or small does our bond get? Right? Like, if you're thinking longevity, whether it's because you're going to work together and take over the world, or because like you just want a best friend when you're old and your kids have left the house, like that's something that has to be nurtured. You can't, like, it's like a garden. You can't be like stomping all over it and letting the weeds grow everywhere. Like, there comes a point, I think, it's too late, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I agree with that. Like, really think of when you're in those moments, is this worth it? Is this worth me sticking and, opposing them on the other side of the table?
Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me of a conversation I was having with one of the women from our Soul Empowered community yesterday, and she was writing. I forget what her response, what she was responding to, but she mentioned something like, it's so hard sometimes to not go to that place of I know exactly what to say to make you feel that way, right, or to hurt you, and listen, that's a human thing. Like, let's be honest here. Is a lot of the time, it is going to be easier, way easier, for you to go to that place of that pattern of showing up that way or saying that thing or bringing that energy. And that's also where the choice comes of how am I choosing to show up in this moment, especially if it doesn't feel the way I want it to feel, right? Because sometimes we can get that real urge. I mean, I know I do. And I'm like, okay.
And it doesn't mean that you're not going to react in a way you didn't want to, by the way. Like, there is also repair, which is just as important. So if you snap, if you don't show up in the way you wanted to, okay, then there's still muscle being built if you can come back to the table and say, I'm sorry for the way I spoke to you, or I'm sorry I wasn't open to your viewpoint, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to really work on that. And the more you flex that muscle, there will be that split second of time where you get to choose. It's like the fork in the road appears and you're like, do I do what I know in this moment is going to feel real good? It's going to feel real good in my body. But I know that's the old way. Or am I going to choose to kind of grit my teeth and you know what I mean? It's not going to be like, no worries, babe, love you. Like that is not what we are talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eventually, you can get to that calm, regulated place and choose kind of that harder road. But trust me, at the beginning, it doesn't feel like that. But also, like when you go to the gym, are you lifting 50 pounds with each bicep right away? No.
Right.
You're just getting to the gym.
It's the muscle you build, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and it's got me thinking as an aside piece here with love languages. I was thinking about this with my relationship with Derek. We've never done the quiz or anything like that. I know you can go and do a quiz or figure out your love languages, but just intuitively, I can kind of see what are our different ways of giving and receiving. And for sure, I can see that his is receiving physical touch, loves that. And he loves to give acts of service. Well, these aren't necessarily mine.
What are yours?
I mean, I was kind of exploring this a little bit. I definitely love a good words of affirmation.
I was just going to guess that. Yeah.
Like you leave me a little note beside my coffee cup, you're in my good books all day long.
Noted.
Physical touch, it depends. Like if I'm tired, no. If I'm energized, yes. But it was interesting because I found myself a couple times go to this more rigid place of, oh, well, he's not giving it to me the way that I want it to be given to me. And one day I had a moment of clarity where I realized that's not actually the point. You know, one, sure, I could express to him, hey, can you show up this way a little bit more for me? And I have, and he does. And I had this moment of clarity where I realized, you know, this isn't just about how he is showing up for me and the ways that I want to receive that, but it's also like, you know, on a day where maybe I don't feel like connecting physically, I make the choice to. And some people might have a lot to say about that. I mean, I have a history with my sexual abuse, so I've really had to work through this piece of having ownership over my body. I get to choose. I'm in control of that. But when I came to this piece of clarity, this wasn't coming from a place of disempowerment. Me choosing that to open up to connection with him, even if I didn't want to, actually felt really clear and grounded. And it was doing something really good for our relationship. But I had to be with that, and I had to have the awareness of everything showing up.
Yeah. I love that. Because I think, by the way, for anyone listening, you should probably read the book. It's a really quick read, to be honest. However your partner is showing you love is how they want to be loved, right? Where we use our own love languages because we just assume, oh, everyone wants what we want. So it's really important, I think, number one, to just be aware, observe. Whatever your partner's trying to do for you, that's probably how you need to show up for them and vice versa. But I do love this piece because, again, coming back to the topic, it's a choice. And I think a lot of women especially struggle with the physical touch. I think a lot of men, physical touch is definitely one of their love languages. And know, like, if there is a bit of a wedge there, you're like, it's not because you're not physically attracted to them, or maybe you don't enjoy whatever it is, head tickles, a hug, you know, all the way to the full blown thing. But there's probably a sense of safety or connection that is lacking for you there. And I think a lot of the times we just say, well, I'm just not into it. Yeah, but you have a choice to make yourself into it. And I'm not saying all the time, right? Like, of course, there's going to be people who probably have a lot to say about this. But if you aren't feeling connected or safe with your husband, it's not always up to them to like extend the olive branch. Like, how can you create that, right?
Yeah.
Again, we get that choice. Do we want to expand or contract our relationship here?
Yeah. And I want to go here for a second. It feels important. And again, if you have not listened to our triggers relationship one from last week, you should, because we talk about disgust, the ick, like these are somatic experiences you're having in your body. And if you're not feeling attracted to your partner, there's a choice you get to make there of not necessarily saying, hey, you need to make me feel a certain way. No, actually, the choice here is to go within yourself, and see what is showing up. That's part of how we then open to feel safe to connect, right? And for me, if I go back to what I just said there around making the choice to open up and connect physically with Derek, I had to go within myself to check who was driving the car, right? And it was my deeper self. It was my empowered, deeper, grounded, rooted, open, safe, higher self, if you want to say that. But this is where the connection within yourself is so important. And it's a choice for you to go within yourself, see what's showing up, and that inner work piece.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. I think there's also this piece too, again, just coming back to connection and all of these pieces. Like, I think I take for granted sometimes the type of conversation or connection that like Tori and I can have. Like, I could talk to him about anything. And I know just from friends and speaking with other women, there are a lot of relationships where like, no, the partner cannot just be asked anything. Like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Like, how are you feeling about this? How's your relationship with so-and-so? Like, they are completely closed off maybe emotionally. So almost creating opportunity, like, don't just talk about the same things. Like, novelty is such an important part, especially like after this veil of marriage or long-term partnership. You have to create either new experiences, new conversation. Like, I just imagine a lot of couples, they get home from work. How was your work day? Good. What'd you eat for lunch? Good. And it's just like, okay, let's watch the same show we watch. And it's just like, bam, 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 bam. Like, of course you're not going to feel connected or excited or any of these pieces, right? But there's a choice there. You have to choose to show up differently. You have to choose to be a little vulnerable. Like, maybe you get one of those conversation decks that ask random questions and you both got to answer it. Like, that's going to feel more vulnerable than stripping your clothes off. Right? So there's a choice there. If you want to deepen the relationship, you want more connection, you want them to see your love language, like, you have to get uncomfortable too.
It's making me think about, because we've been moving through so many hard pieces, some of the lighter things that we used to do, Derek and I, have fallen off a little bit. Because one thing in the beginning of our relationship, especially the first like 3-4 months, we'd go into the records. And like, I mean, you know where I go when I go into the records. It's other dimensions, it's other experiences, all these different soul lifetimes that come through. And that was so fun for us that we would then sit and we talk about what we experienced. And there was a lot of new stuff that would show up there. And it's just making me think to start doing that again. It's such a good reminder where we just get comfortable, and which makes sense because we're human and we're creatures of habit. But like,
I think you bring up this great point of like an action someone could take is like, take inventory. Look at your relationship. What do you love? What do you want more of? What are you unhappy with? What used to be there that isn't? I think physical connection and play and fun are probably the two biggest areas for couples or partners who've been together for a long time. And guess what? If those aren't there, you have a choice. Christina has a choice this weekend to bring that back.
Yeah, maybe tonight too.
She doesn't need to be given a permission slip. She can just like, let's do this.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, that's how easy it is, but we make it a lot harder than it sounds.
Yes. And this is important. So to help you moving forward with this piece, as you're moving forward with your relationship, or maybe you're not in a relationship, but you're thinking about what you really desire for yourself. The piece that Tess just said there around taking inventory, I also want you to think about or feel into where there might be resistance to even taking inventory. Because if we go back to what we said around that piece of, it is also a choice to not dig in. It is also a choice to not look at the things. And you might think that you're doing your relationship good by just letting it be where it is because it's maybe smooth. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with smooth. But is there also resistance to being afraid of what this could mean if you dig in? And that's not going to get you anywhere. It might prolong a little bit of the smoothness, which will then most likely turn into stagnancy, which will likely turn into a rut, which will then probably create some form of a rock bottom. Ew. Sorry.
Resent. Yeah. that you're making me think of, when you see those older couples who are in their 80s or 90s and they're still together sitting on the park bench. I think I've seen a reel that says something that's like, how many times do you think that they had to have hard conversations? How many times do you think they had to reinvent, evolve their relationship?
Yes.
How many hardships do you think that they had to go through or sacrifices they had to make for each other? Those are choices. And if that is what you want in your relationship, that also means being able to show up and being able to deepen it by making the choices that we've talked about on this episode.
Preach.
Yeah, girl.
So I want to leave you beautiful listeners with one more thing. And this is something that I'm learning. It's something that I'm seeing in all of the really strong, healthy relationships out there. And that is, sometimes we're like, what's the right relationship for me? Who's the one? And this is something Tess and I've brought up a few times in different podcasts. I don't think that there is one person out there for us. But what I'm starting to see is that the right relationship is where you both are showing up for yourself and each other. And there is a willingness to dig in. There is a willingness to look at what's showing up, to shift things, to hold the tough stuff, to be willing to change, and that there is a mixture of hard and smooth.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. Because, if you're not willing, you won't show up. Like, you're kind of like up a creek without a paddle. Really.
Yeah. Willingness it's so underrated. And to me, it is the foundation of any type of relationship that will be able to evolve.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Sit on some of that, folks.
Okay, friends. Well, we hope that you enjoyed this episode. We really wish that if this did have an impact for you, if there have been any episodes that have really helped you, please share the episodes. We really want to be able to get into as many ears as possible. Tess and I put a lot of our time and energy aside each week to create these, to dig into these pieces, to plan. And it's because we love this and we found so much shifts in our own lives in these pieces that we talk about. So if there's anything we could ask, it's please share, write a review if you found it helpful, because it allows us to connect with those who haven't found it yet.
Thank you, everyone. Have an amazing rest of your week.
Have a good day.